And I think we should be good. Okay, perfect. So we're just a couple minutes before 3, so we can kind of settle in and get ready for our event. We have several people joining the webinar, so that's awesome to see. Welcome to Jay and Jeff and Ken. Thank you guys for joining us. And we have people tuning in to Facebook Live. I'll repeat this a little bit into the event, but for those in the webinar, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you can kind of move your cursor around there, and at the bottom you should see a Q&A icon there, and you're welcome to just click on that and submit a question anytime, and I will be monitoring that Q&A comments, questions, chat there, and then as the opportunity arises, we'll kind of engage with David with those questions. So feel free to ask a question anytime. It's not interrupting anybody. They'll just kind of sit there and hold until the right moment. So, and for all of those joining us on Facebook Live, feel free to ask a question in the comments, and we're monitoring that Facebook Live feed as well. So we're so prompt today. I'm proud of us. We're like right on time. So we'll go ahead and begin. It's 3 o'clock. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here if I can get my voice under control.
Oh, that's okay. Cough away. Well, and I feel terrible that we had to cancel our May event, which we were all looking forward to so much with your release of your brand new book. And, you know, this has been, we were talking about before we kind of went live and started opening up, what a unique time it is right now, to say, maybe the nicest way to say unique, time to be coming out with a new book during the quarantine, during the COVID crisis, where, you know, typically when you release a book, we would all gather in a space, we would be spending time together, kids would be on a carpet, cuddled up together, reading, and maybe coming up to you and looking at the pictures and asking questions. But I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to go virtual and, you know, give the kids a reading and a chance to interact with you and ask questions. So this is really great. It's second best for sure, but we're happy to be able to have that opportunity.
I am very, very happy to have the opportunity, because in this year, I've had more books out and coming out than in any year that I can remember. The After Dark came out in February, and one was coming up with Jane Yolen in August, and a couple with educators for September and October. And yet virtually every opportunity to introduce a book has been canceled, from the first of this year to right now. And so, as I mentioned to you in an earlier conversation, this is the first opportunity I've had to read aloud from my new book that came out in February. So
wow.
Yay.
Yay. Well, I'm so glad, and we'll get to it right away, I promise. So before we kind of jump into the reading, I wanted to just give a few announcements. For those of you who are just joining us, this is our third event, our third author event for the summer, and we're going to have events weekly. So you can always check in with our calendar on those, and I will be updating on our calendar, on our website, and also on our Facebook site for that. My name is Jen Mervin. I'm the owner of Pagination Bookshop here in Springfield, Missouri, in downtown on Walnut Street, Historic District. And though we unfortunately have been closed to browsing and events due to the current crisis, we are open online. We have an online shop at shop.paginationbookshop.com, and we are also doing curbside pickup. So we do have a lot of options. We have shipping, curbside pickup, and free downtown area delivery to your door. So if you are interested in ordering David's books after this event, which I'm sure you will, we have lots in the shop available that we had picked up for his May event that are just waiting to be read. So yeah, just let us know. You can send us a message, you can order online, you can send us an email, however you like, and we'll get those books to you. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. And I want to now tell you a little bit about David. So I'll give you his formal introduction and then we'll kind of launch right into his reading. Many of us in Springfield know David well. He is a public figure. He is a beloved children's book author and literacy advocate here locally in Springfield and in the region and in Missouri. He has published, I had originally put in my posting 92 titles, but David tells me that After Dark is his 97th title, and this year he will be coming out with his 100th title published, which is pretty incredible. That's amazing. His books have earned dozens of honors, including the Christopher Award for the Book of Giant Stories, and his work has been translated into 12 languages, anthologized more than 185 times, and appeared in over 80 magazines and journals. In Springfield, of course, David Harrison Elementary School is named after David Harrison. And in 2007, the Missouri Librarian Association presented David with its Literacy Award for the body of his work. And that was just a very carefully edited excerpt from all of the many honors that David has accrued over his many years writing for children. And he also has a very active blog. So if you're interested in his daily activities and his word of the week, to write some poems and get some writing prompts, please check out that blog. And David, I would love to hear a little bit more about your blog maybe later in the hour if you want to share a little bit about that project. Okay, great. So I'm gonna kind of log off my camera here so that the eyes are on you. I'll still be, oh, someone said hello. Hi. I will be monitoring those questions, so keep them coming. And then as we kind of move through the reading, I will pop back in and kind of ask David questions as we go. Okay, David, handing it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jen, and hello, everyone. I look forward to receiving your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Before we get started, let me tell you just a little bit about the background. Where Jen is sitting is a home where a good friend of mine used to live when I was a boy, just finishing middle school, going into high school. I lived on Elm Street. Jen, if you went out your back door and across the yard to the next street over, Elm Street, my old home is no longer there. I think it's a fraternity house or something now, but it used to be 1137 East Elm. I worked my first job right across the corner at Elm Street and National, what used to be Farmers Market, Thomas Market, and is now a Panera Bread. My girlfriend lived right around the corner on Cherry Street, Sandy Kennan, and she worked at Brigant's Food Market, which is right across the street from Thomas. So we have a lot of history there. And Sandy and I began dating, and 6 years later, we became married, and we still are. So I have a lot of fond memories of that whole area. Well, I didn't intend to become a writer. I thought I was going to become a scientist, and I did. That's what my first job was in science. And I got my bachelor's degree in science from Drury, and then went on from there. And if we have time and interest, we'll get back to the rest of my education. But for now, let me, if it's okay with you, I'd like to read a little bit from this book, After Dark. This is number 97. I hope that you can see that. This is a little tricky, and I'm not used to it. I'm not like these wizard weather people who can look at a blank wall and make it seem like they know exactly where they are. I don't have that ability, so forgive me if I say, look at this, and you can't even see it. Anyway, this book is called After Dark, Poems About Nocturnal Animals. And it came out in February of this year. It was published by a company called Boyd's, Mills, and Kane. And it was illustrated beautifully by Stephanie Liberis. And I hope that you will see, or maybe better yet, get a copy of this book. This has been a heck of a year to try to introduce a new book because, well, of what we're all living through. Anyway, I want you to see some of the illustrations because they're just terrific. And if you were an artist, you can imagine the challenge of writing, of illustrating a book that all takes place after night, after dark, because that's the whole idea. I wanted to write a book about animals that are most active after the sun goes down. Many of them don't get really with it until we're in bed. At least if we go to bed fairly early. Well, so Stephanie did a beautiful, beautiful job. And my thanks to her, my thanks to Boyd, Mills, and Kane. And let me tell you, I want to read a poem or two, but I also want to tell you that as a poet, each poem you write is a small story. And you can learn a lot about an animal, in this case, a lot about an animal without knowing exactly what to pick and choose to talk about. So as you go through this collection, you will see the point of view I took with each subject, each topic. For example, the first one is about the gray wolf. I read a lot about the gray wolf. I have a lot of notes about the gray wolf. But it's a poem. And I couldn't tell you everything I learned about the gray wolf, and you wouldn't want me to. What you want me to do is to tell you something that sort of gets you interested in the gray wolf. So what did I do? Well, I finally chose to write about a young gray wolf. So it goes like this. The rehearsal. You wild thing, you bouncy pup, roughhousing with your siblings. Let the grown-ups howl in the night. Keep your belly full, hide you from eagles. Play rambunctious games, growly, pouncy, bitey games, till time will come soon enough to grow up, fight for life. Time will come when you and your mate will run the pack, decide where to hunt, hide your pups from eagles. For now, play tag, pretend grr, pounce ferociously on your siblings. So that was the point of view I decided on. Rather than dwell on the lives of wolves, I thought it might be more interesting to just remember that all animals start out young, like us. Here's one about the cougar. Many of us have not seen in the wild a cougar. And most of us probably hope to keep it that way. Still, I read a lot about the cougar. Well, what do you say about the cougar when it comes right down to it? I decided to think about what happens when a cougar makes a kill and then marks his territory. In other words, you got to eat and you got to pee. And that's what happens in this poem. Posted property. Buries remains of the deer for later. Pads on soft, silent feet. Leaves few clues to where he's been. Pauses, scrapes pine needles into a mound. Sprays urine, a signpost, a warning, reminding others where they should not be. Belly full, night's work done, he rests. Well, let me read maybe two more, if that's all right. Here's one about a skunk, a mother skunk. I hope you can see that. A mother skunk trying to get her kids out of the street. Now, my wife, Sandy, and I saw this happen one night. We were leaving a party, and fairly late at night, driving home, I had to stop the car because here was this mother skunk right out in the middle of the street, trying to herd her little ones out of the street and get them up the hill to safety because the kids all thought it was fun to play in the street. Well, kids will be kids. Night class. Mama skunk knows the story. Never play in an empty street. Danger lurks behind the light, in dark doorways, behind trash cans, around the corner. Mama skunk knows the story. Never play in an empty street. The street is never empty. Well, Jen, do I have room for one more here, you think?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay, I'll do this one then, The Toothy Grin. And this is about a fox. And I don't know if I'm showing you or not, but I hope I am. Well, this is a kit fox, K-I-T. And a kit fox isn't very big. It has a lot of teeth. So it goes like this. And again, I had to pick something, a point of view. And so in this case, I chose to describe the fox as a victim. A potential prey might see the fox, might perceive the fox. So it goes like this. If you are mouse, bird, rabbit, if you are squirrel, grasshopper, rat, beware when fox emerges from the dark. First, you'll see the blackberry nose, then the grin that hides stiletto teeth. Above the teeth, luminous eyes, ears like antennae tuned to you. Behind the teeth, luxurious coat, glorious bushy tail. But all you'll see of the fox in the dark are teeth. 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 Well, that is After Dark. Okay, back to you, Jen.
Thank you. That's so great. So it's so fun to hear you read. I love it. You can tell you've been reading to kids. I love it. You just know it when you encounter someone who knows how to read a book for kids. I just love it. Thank you so much. That was such a great reading. Well, I'm happy to say that we have several questions. So I'm just going to turn it over to the audience. Here on our webinar, Susan Hutchins writes, "Hi, David.
Hey,
so nice to see you and enjoy your poetry." And Ken asks, and Ken, you totally anticipated my question because I was going to ask this as well. Have you ever attempted to illustrate your own work?
Oh boy. Sue, when I was a kid, 7 years old, I used to draw all the time. That's what I really thought I was going to be, was an artist. And I was always that kid in the class who was drawing the pumpkins and cats at Halloween and so on. Every season they had a bunch of my pictures up on the wall. And later, in 1982, much later, I took a class, my one and only class in art at Drury University. And the professor liked my work and said that I probably had some potential there, and she hoped that I would develop. This is Jackie Warren. But then I got on the school board, and for the next 6 years, everything was sort of a blur, and I never got back to it. So the long answer is I like to draw. I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not an intuitive artist. I can look at Jen here on this monitor, and if she would hold still, I could draw her so that she would know it was her. It would be a very good likeness, but I don't have that skill that a true artist has to turn her head, to make her smile, to animate her. I can't do that, and that's what makes the big difference between someone like me and a true artist. So I wish I could.
And you've worked with several illustrators over the years. What do you think makes, to you, I mean, to me, I think children's books are just they're just my favorite. They're just beautiful works of art, and there's such a broad spectrum of, writing and art styles. We have several silent children's books that are just illustrations in the shop. We have several books that are just text. Right. And no illustrations. BJ Novak's sweet book, this is a book with no pictures. I'm wondering, to you, sort of what in your mind creates the best children's book? Is it a certain approach to illustration, a certain approach to text?
Well, it's a partnership. They call it a picture book for a reason, obviously. And the picture gets the top billing, actually. It's not a writing book with pictures, it's a picture book. So the artist is extremely important. What makes or breaks a book is how well the editor or the art director at a publishing house matches the style and the temperament of these two people. Most of us never meet. Some of us do, but most of us never meet. So the writing comes first. My ideas are there on a piece of paper, and the artist somewhere in this country or some other country is reading my work and then must come back with a visual interpretation of those words. And if it comes off stiffly or misses the mark in some way, you have a disaster, or you have to start again. And that has happened too, where an editor has actually fired the artist and hired another one. Now, one of the best books I ever had was with Dan Burr, and the book was Pirates. And in that case, my editor, Stephen, asked me if I would be interested in writing a collection of poems for this artist he knew. He'd worked with this artist for many, many years with Dan. And he said, Dan tells me he's always wanted to write, to draw pictures of pirates. So I said yes, and he introduced us by email. Dan, this is David. He's a gentleman, and he writes well. David, this is Dan. He's a wonderful man and is a wonderful artist. You guys get together and make us a book.
Oh, love it.
And so we were totally in sync. And Dan and I right away began emailing back and forth. Hey, Dan, what do you think about this? Hey, David, would you be able to do a poem about this picture that I want to draw? And it turned out to be a winner in all kinds of ways. And it represented the state of Missouri and the National Book Fair, and it just did very, very well.
That's wonderful.
So that's the best of it.
Yeah.
Of course, you have the other extreme too, but we'll dwell on the positive.
I love that. Well, and I am so excited to share this question from the wonderful Leah Hamilton, who I love and miss every day.
Oh,
and
don't we all? Yes.
Who is writing from Germany, of course, with her two beautiful little sons. And she asks, I know that children perceive danger and threats differently than adults in books and film. How do you decide what is just right scary for children and not too scary?
Boy, that is so hard, and particularly in this era. Um, we've kind of come full cycle in a way. Back in the 1800s, when some of the very first stories for children were created, they were all very, very didactic. They were there to teach and preach and keep those kids from in the straight and narrow, to teach them religion, to teach them to be faithful, to obey their parents. And some of those stories were just grim and grisly, and about children burning themselves up with matches and falling down wells and drowning. And they were just horrifying. Now, that became sanitized and came up through the years, and we got to Dr. Seuss and went to the other end. And these days, until about, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, we tended to create literature for children. And literature takes on a wide range, and some of it is kind of scary, but kids are like adults. We like to be just a little scared sometimes, as long as we're very, very safe and know that nothing is really going to happen. But it goes all the way through to laughter, friendship, family, and all that. Now, because of the pandemic and other concerns as a worldwide community, things tend to be more serious again. So children's literature, like all literature, is beginning to reflect the latest twist and turn of this globe we live on. And I am concerned personally that we may, in our eagerness to inform children, go maybe a little bit too far at times. Certainly they can absorb it, they can take it. Kids are tough, but they're also kids. And so when I'm writing on a serious subject, I try to always bear in mind that whatever I say to this child will be remembered sometimes for a lifetime. And if we present information that isn't quite true, accurate, whatever measurement you choose, that too will be remembered and maybe internalized and fed back to the world in various ways when that child becomes an adult. So it's a very heavy responsibility, very serious.
Yeah, I think many of us can remember those early children's books that, we just never forget. I mean, for good or maybe the opposite. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I remember George Saunders talking about how kids are so much harder to write for than adults, and this is a guy who's won many, many awards, the Man Booker Prize, and has a couple children's books. And I remember it really stuck with me when he said that. And he said, for children, it's often harder even for us as adults to write happy stories. It's often easier to, without sounding like cheesy or like we're working in platitudes.
Correct.
So I'm going to move to a question from the webinar, and Vita Jones asks, which is easier to write, nonfiction or fiction?
Vita Jones, hi, how are you? For those of you who might not know her, she is a wonderful author herself and has many pelts on her belt, or whatever you call that. Thanks, Vita. It's good to hear from you. Well, I was educated in science, and of course that is a field where we keep stressing, get the facts. We really need to know what's going on. So by background and training, I tend to do pretty well in nonfiction. I know how to do research, and I've written about how to do research. On the other hand, gosh, I love a good story, and don't we all? And I grew up reading, or being read to, more stories than nonfiction. So my very first love was for The Wizard of Oz and Bambi and some of the old classics where you could really cuddle up and listen and get involved in the story. And my dad used to get it wrong. Every time he read a story to me, it was the Four Bears or was something. He was always messing it up for my benefit. And of course, I was yelling and screaming and laughing.
Yeah.
So reading was fun. Being read to was fun. These days, there is a tendency in the marketplace to demand nonfiction. There again, I'm right in the middle of that because I like to write nonfiction, but I still have that little concern that we may, everything people do, we tend to swing this way until we hit something and then swing back the other way until we bounce off something else. And so I don't want to lose track of stories, and I want to keep telling stories even if the market doesn't particularly want to hear them anymore. Right now they want more nonfiction. So Vita, I don't know, kid. You write both beautifully, and I know you probably have your own feelings, and your monthly essays or classics. So anyway, I guess right now I'm writing what they'll take, but I tend to like nonfiction very much.
Well, I love that. And actually my sister Nat is watching from California. And she asks, has the pandemic, hi Nat, by the way, I love you. Has the pandemic inspired you to write a children's book about the topic? When my 1-year-old is older, I would love to read a book to her about this unique time. An appropriate children's book. Yeah.
Sure.
Great question.
No, I won't go there because there will be thousands of others who will, and it will become a very heavily freighted, overworked topic very soon. There will emerge a few good stories, and a lot of terrible stories will come from this. Anything this important generates instant interest from writers everywhere. I choose not to get into that because I know that somebody else will do a much better job than I would. And I'm going to stick to what I know and what I do and let somebody else take care of the pandemic.
Well, that actually kind of connects to Ken's question here in the webinar. He's asking, what are you working on right now?
Well, at the moment, today, before this, I don't mean this to sound disparaging, before my opportunity to visit with you all. My writing today began at 6 o'clock, as it does every day. And I was tweaking a manuscript about endangered species. And I think I finished it. I sent it off to my agent just shortly before you and I started talking.
Oh, congratulations.
And, so I hope that one's done. I have a couple of others in that same stage where I've been waiting for almost 8 months now for an editor at one publishing house to get back to me. Again, thank you, Mr. Pandemic, for slowing everything down in the whole world. But since all the publishers are working from home, all the editors, everyone, they can't get a committee together to make a decision without going through Zoom or some other vehicle. So everything that used to take too long takes way too long now. And so I hope each day to hear from this editor and that it'll be a yes on another story.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on a middle grade novel that actually I wrote some time ago, and I'm going back to it. I think this is maybe the 3rd or 4th time that I've gone through it and tried to pump more energy into it. And so usually I'm working on 3 or 4 things, or 5 or 6 or 7.
Wonderful. Susan asks, David, when you write, do you see pictures or movies in your head?
Yes, I do. If I'm writing about animals, it's kind of strange how everyone thinks. When I'm writing about that kit fox, I see that kit fox. I see it happening. When that cougar was squatting over a pile of pine needles to scent, leave a scent to mark his territory, I see that. I can almost smell it. But when I'm writing about kids, which I don't do very often, most of my characters are animals. When I'm writing about kids, I never really see the kid. I feel the child. I feel the personality, the character. So when I see the artist's interpretation of children in a book of mine, I'm always surprised. I'm meeting them for the first time. I don't have any idea what color they are, what size they are, what they look like. I know if they're a boy or girl sometimes, but otherwise they're just they're characters in my mind. So maybe that's one reason why I tend to write about animals. I'm an animal lover. I'm a scientist, a biologist, and I can do more things with animals than I can with children because there are fewer restrictions.
Mm-hmm. And Sue also says that she really likes the backstories to your poems that you read for After Dark.
Yes, that was something else that I didn't mention. Thank you, Susan. Very often I do include additional information about each subject in the book. Again, because you have to pick and choose what you write about if it's a poem. And there are these other facts that you want to tell the child, the young reader, and those are best left for little descriptions in the back of the book. So yes, After Dark has those, and some of the other books I've done also do.
Well, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you, David, and if you wanted to maybe read from another book, or
Sure.
did you have one in mind?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay, great.
I'll go back chronologically to the book before last. This one came from Holiday House, and it's called "And the Bullfrogs Sing." And this one is illustrated by Kate Cosgrove, another very, very stellar artist. And as I say, published by Holiday House. This is not poetry, this is prose. But one of the reviewers likened it to free verse, which always delights me. When I'm writing prose, I work it very, very hard, and to the point that it probably does come off as being, if not free verse, not far from it. And this isn't the only book that has been compared that way by reviewers of the past. This is the life story of a bullfrog. And we all hear them. I live on a lake, and the last week or so, Sandy and I sit outside a lot of the evening, and we've been hearing the first bullfrog songs of the year. So I decided to write this one to help kids follow what happens from, they see tadpoles. That's something that pretty much everybody sees at some point or another after a hard rain and a mud puddle that doesn't go away for a few days. You're very likely you'll wind up seeing tadpoles in it. If they're not frogs or toads, but some kind of tadpole. Well, so this one begins, I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read a little bit of it. It is spring, time to find a mate. A male bullfrog sings loud and deep. Rum, rum, rum. A female bullfrog likes his song. Before long, she lays eggs. She lays them in sheets on the surface of the pond. A fish tries to eat an egg. Yuck. To some fish, bullfrog eggs taste bad. The eggs hatch. The babies have no legs. They have tails. They can only breathe underwater. They are not frogs yet. They're tadpoles. The tadpoles nibble plants. They nibble algae. They grow fatter and begin to grow legs. Their tails grow shorter. They can breathe air. Now they are little bullfrogs. Little bullfrogs taste good. Yum. Fish love to eat them. So do turtles, birds, snakes, and big bullfrogs. I'm going to stop and show you some of the pictures because it's hard to do both at the same time. And these pictures are really, really special because the artist has managed somehow to capture the life of this bullfrog and the female bullfrog. One reviewer pointed out that I skipped from liking his song to laying eggs, and I elected to do that on purpose, to save space, so to speak. Anyway, sometimes you have to read between the lines, but I think most kids will get the idea that eggs come from the mama, and after a while, these young tadpoles mature and become young frogs. But the young frogs have a long way to go in competition with the big frogs. The big frogs tend to eat them, for one thing. But as the mating time rolls around each year, the growing bullfrogs, young growing bullfrogs, sit right there on the riverbank or lake shore, and they sing their song too, but their voices are still young and they're high and they're not very deep or have much timbre to them. So the females continue to find the guys with the big voices. Well, that's tough, but it happens all throughout the animal kingdom too. The young males are always challenging the older males until there comes a time when they finally win. And that's the case here too. When the young bullfrogs finally grow up and develop their own big voices, then they too learn how to attract a female and have a date. And that is, and the Bullfrogs Sing. Jen?
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, and Peggy Wooden joked, eggs come from singing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. So, yeah, you had mentioned a little bit earlier kind of some of your educational background. Did you always want to be a children's book author, or how did you kind of start this journey as a career?
No, I didn't intend to be a writer at all. And my senior year at Drury, my last and final semester there, I had a call from the dean, Frank Clippinger at that time. And he called me into his office and he said, "You've got too much science and not enough other coursework." I said, "Well, that's my major." He said, "Yeah, but this is a liberal arts philosophy at Drury, as you well know, and you can't just take science. So your last semester, you take something else." I said, "Well, what, Dr. Clippinger?" He said, "I don't care, just as long as there's no more science." And so he sort of scared me out of the science building. And my advisor finagled me into a writing class. A friend of hers was the professor who taught creative writing at Drury, Clark Graham. And I had no requisites for it. I had never thought about it. In all those years, no one had ever asked me to write a story. It's hard to imagine today because kids are asked to write stories from kindergarten.
Yeah.
But in those days, we wrote book reports and we wrote reports about other things, but creative writing was no. So I sat there as a 20-year-old man or 21-year-old, and for the first time in my life, had to figure out how to write a story, and I was terrified. But as it turned out, the fellow who taught it liked it very much and encouraged me to become a writer. And it took me 6 years, and by then I was finished with graduate work at Emory University, where I became a parasitologist, and 3 years in science as a pharmacologist in Evansville, Indiana for Meade Johnson. But I started writing at night, and it took all that time to finally learn enough about being a writer to sell something. But I was writing for adults, and not until Sandy and I wound up in Kansas City, and we had 2 children then, Robin, our daughter, and Jeff, our son. And I finally, it's a long story, I'll leave all that out, but I finally wound up writing something for kids. and it sold. It was something called The Boy with the Drum, and it sold very well, sold 2 million copies.
Wow.
I loved the feeling of writing for kids, and so I did another one, and so on. And here, last year I celebrated 50th anniversary from the day that Boy with the Drum was published.
Ah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, and I know that you have a passion for writing for children, and you also have a passion for promoting literacy. And we were talking before we kind of started and went live about your new books that are coming out in the fall, and how you often partner with teachers and educators to create a book that, you know, is fun for kids to read, and also has, you know, resources for teachers or parents that are looking to kind of, you know, explode the experience of reading the book into like an activity or a craft or a conversation or a writing exercise or a drawing exercise. Can you maybe talk a little bit about kind of the work that you do in literacy advocacy, and then maybe, you know, if anybody is watching who has kids who are maybe reluctant readers or you know, struggle with reading, you know, what might you tell them?
Yes, I decided in 1999, I think 98, that I would like to insinuate myself into college classrooms. I wanted my name to be connected to teachers in the making. I wanted them to know who I was. So it began with a marketing ploy. I thought, if I can write something that winds up in a textbook, then the professor teaching that class will have my name in front of those young teachers, and they will go to their classrooms and they'll remember me.
Right.
So how's that for long range planning?
I like it.
However, once I began, again, like so often in my past, I discovered some new passion, some new love. And in this case, it was because the more I learned in partnership with real educators, teachers, professors, the more I learned from them, the more I wanted to learn from them. And the more I wanted to become part of a team that helps bring to the classroom teacher support in ways that are meaningful. And of course, literacy comes naturally as something that I believe in because of what I do anyway. I have 2 books coming out this year, one with Laura Robb and one with Mary Jo Fresh. Both just outstanding educators, and I'm honored to work with them. And this will be, I think, books number 15 and 16 of books that will wind up in the classroom for teachers to use with their students, anywhere, depending on the book, from pre-K through 8th grade or so. And it ranges from vocabulary building, guided reading, practice reading, just understanding the language. I've written about a lot of things, and in each case, the professor, the teacher, the educator brings to it what he or she knows, which is considerable about what the field says, the scholarship and the field, the research, the studies. And what I bring to it is what I've learned over 50 years about how to put together a book, you know, a text, a poem, something on subjects that are helpful to the teacher and to the students in the classroom.
I wonder, have you seen over those years, have you noticed any trends in subject matter? You mentioned that, you know, when kind of big things are happening in the world, the literature reflects that. I mean, obviously, so much has happened in the last 50 years, and so much is happening now. Of course, the pandemic and the uprisings and the Black Lives Matter movement, pushing for more diversity in publishing and telling more stories where you see, you know, all kinds of kids that reflect our actual population. Yeah. I wonder, have you noticed a trend, you know, where you've seen sort of these sort of movements in the literature responding, and how's your work kind of responded to some of that?
Well, one thing to remember, pardon me, is that in the trade book world, it takes about 5 years from the time I have an idea in my head until I'm holding a new book.
Right, yeah.
So these things that are happening to us right now started a few months ago. And there will be some rush to press. There will be some hurriedly put together books, some of which will be better than others. But it won't be for a while before thoughtful, reasoned literature will take place. And when that happens, yes, we're going to see quite a change, I think, in books for children, as well as books for teachers to use in their classrooms. There are many articles appearing because you can write an article a little bit quicker. Already the journals for National Council of Teachers of English and International Literacy Association and the American Library Association, those are beginning to show up already, of course. But it'll take a while before the bulk of the change will make itself known.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Kind of circling back to a previous question, for those parents who are working with kids who maybe, don't like to read or, are struggling to read, what tools have you found, as a children's book author and a parent and an educator, that maybe we could use practically in our homes or when we interact with our kids around reading?
The thing we forget is that as adults, when we go to a bookstore, like Pagination,
Yeah.
yes, we pick out what we want to read. Pretty simple. But if you're 9 years old and you can't drive, you don't have any money of your own, people have a tendency to say, here, read this. Well, that happens in school too. Sometimes the child just flat isn't interested in that. And that is a huge thing. It's a big block. A speaker I heard once talking to teachers told them, if you don't have 100 books in your classroom that are guaranteed crowd pleasers, that your kids love to read, then you're in the wrong profession and you should get out of the business. Of course, everybody went like that. He said, I'm not kidding you. He said, reading is that important. And
Yes.
The way you get to reading is you find something the child is interested in. He said, it's find something they like. So when I'm working with teachers to do books for the classroom, that's always paramount. I always try to find subjects that would be of interest, not to everybody, there's no such thing, but to at least a lot of people, and then give them a lot of variety, so that when young people are exposed to literature with enough of a menu that they can pick something that really interests them, then you have a big step forward in pursuing their development as literate readers.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find that kids are kind of like drawn to certain topics over others, or what are the kind of the winners? Animals, of course.
Well, they like series more than they used to. Now, when I was a boy, I had a couple of series that I liked, but most books were singles, or maybe two. Today, the market is awash with one character or a little set of characters, and they have 75 adventures. They go on and on and on. Well, if it works, it works. I mean, look what Harry Potter did for young readers. These things were thick, and kids who had never read anything were reading all those books. So if you find the right vehicle, and part of that is that series idea, more power to you as a writer. And I can't do that. I hate to admit it, but my mind tells you everything it wants to tell you one time, and it moves on, and I can't pull it back. God knows I've tried, but I can't. And those people who can need to do that because young people like series. They also like more science fiction than they used to. They like anything that has technology in it. Technology is everywhere. And
Yeah.
kids take to it. I can't. I'm way too old to ever feel comfortable with technology. I just
Same.
have to put up with it.
Yeah.
When I'm in trouble, I say, "Oh, Jeff, that's our son.
Yeah.
Please help again."
Yes.
But kids take to it naturally, and so anything that has to do with technology is good for them. But they love adventures, and the more outrageous, the better. I don't know how many times we save the world now, but I'm sure we'll save it a few more times, and probably the
Yes.
universe as well. Yeah.
Never enough.
Never enough.
I thought we could maybe end with one more reading,
Okay.
if you'd be willing.
Sure. Let's see.
I'll sign off here and give you the whole screen.
Okay. I'll do this one then. This is called A Place to Start a Family. And this book was published by Charles Bridge and illustrated by Giles LaRoche. And Giles is yet another fantastic artist. I have really, really been blessed by being partnered with so many fine artists over the years. Giles, among his other talents, has sort of an architectural background in his artwork. And he draws a picture and then cuts out pieces of paper and little tiny pieces of paper and glues them over the sketch and then paints each one of these things separately so that it stands out almost like a three-dimensional picture. I'm sorry, I'm all thumbs here trying to find you a good example. But you can see how these illustrations just pop out. Well, this was his idea, actually. He said, I want to do a book about the kinds of structures that animals design and build. You know, we as humans are pretty good with architecture and finding all kinds of materials to use. Well, animals have to use whatever is available to them. Sometimes they make it, like spiders spinning their webs, or wasps chewing wood and creating paper to build their nest. Sometimes the animals dig, and sometimes they use twigs and mud. So I said, fine, that sounds like a good idea. And again, very much like Dan Burr and I did on pirates and again on cowboys. Giles and I have done 2 books now also. The other one, I'll show you quickly, was Now You See Them, Now You Don't. And this one also represented the state of Missouri at the National Book Fair. That's about 200,000 people go to that thing each year, or at least pre-pandemic numbers. So I've had a lot of fun working with Giles. And so here's an idea that grew into a poem. Some of you may get the willies about this because it's about a trapdoor spider, but hey, we've got them. This is the California trapdoor spider. And spiders of this kind dig little tunnels, dig down to the dirt, cover it with a little trapdoor made of silk, of web, and then they wait until something trips and falls down, and then their babies at the bottom get lunch. Well, you have to eat something. You can't eat flies all your life. In a silk-lined hole, she lies in wait, patiently to seal the fate of cricket, centipede, or roach. Eyes watch the prey approach. She lifts the door, leaps and zap, another victim down the trap. And in the dark, without a sound, her hungry babies gather round. Is that too creepy? Jen, you asked if I have to worry about scaring kids to death. I hope that didn't bother anybody. I'll do one more. No, I won't. It's getting close to the hour. And I'll quit while, in case we have another question. But thanks for letting me read again.
Oh, perfect. No, I love that. And I love stories about spiders. So I'm a good audience member for that story. We just have a couple comments. Sue writes, students really enjoy the extra info in the back of your books, and kids love knowing the authors are real people, and that you're so good at connecting with students. I agree. I think it's really empowering to see a real life person who is writing as a career. You know, it seems so mysterious, or these books just appear out of nowhere, but yeah, real passionate people are working on them and think about them all the time. And Dana shares from Facebook Live, Dana from the board of the Ozarks Literacy Council,
Hey,
shares that you are one of their biggest supporters and that literacy is life. And Dana, amen to that for sure. So I thought we could end sort of with, kind of an open-ended question. David, is there anything that, you haven't really been able to talk about after dark or read from it? Is there anything more that you'd like to say about that book, or that you wish you'd had the opportunity to at all your canceled events?
get the book. Well,
Yeah.
it's one that I'm especially proud of. And it's such a struggle to introduce a new book at this time of our global history. So yes, I have high hopes that After Dark it will continue to come on until more and more people really do discover it and tell others about it. A lot of information is packed into the poetry is again in the back of the book. So
Yeah.
if you have little ones, or even some that aren't so little and think they might be interested, I would appreciate it very much if people would pass the word around.
Wonderful. Well, and everyone is thanking you, and all over the place here between Facebook and the webinar. And I will definitely echo that sentiment. David, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us and sharing your wisdom and your creativity and your beautiful books.
Thank you.
I so appreciate it. Maybe we'll have to do this again. Maybe we'll do one for your book later this summer when it comes out.
I'll be right here ready.
Yeah, I know. This is kind of nice because everyone I ask is like, we're home. That's kind of the perfect
Jen,
time.
can people see this later if they missed it this time?
Yes. So what I will do is, as always, all of our videos of all of our author events are stored in our Facebook videos section on the Facebook, our Facebook page, which is just Pagination Bookshop. So give us a like on there, and you can view this interview. And then, for viewers who are interested in your blog, where might I direct them?
Well, I do a blog almost every day. If you happen to go to my website, it will direct you to the blog. But the blog is just the http://davidlharrison.wordpress.com. And
Perfect.
It's about my life as a writer, things that interest me, things I'm doing. Today on my blog, I announced this lovely opportunity to visit with you, Jen, and talk about books. Tomorrow, I'm doing another Zoom interview with a librarian in Clinton, Missouri, so that'll be on my blog in the morning.
Oh, wonderful.
And if I have a new book coming up, I talk about that. And sometimes I feature the books of others. I love to talk about success wherever we find it, and it's a very tough, competitive business. So when anybody is successful and actually gets something published, I say hooray and celebrate.
Yes, absolutely. Well, celebrating you and hooray to you in this 97th book. That's amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you again.
And thank you for all you do in our community and for supporting Pagination and supporting all the literacy groups and the teachers that you do. So if you guys are interested in getting David's books, of course, find your favorite local independent bookstore. If you are here in Springfield, we would love for you to shop at our shop. We have a bunch of David's books in stock, and hopefully when all this is over, we can have a nice, beautiful book signing where we all come together and celebrate in person and eat cupcakes and read together. But until then, we have safe contactless pickup. So if you send me an email or order online on our online website and just click free in-store pickup, or you can choose shipping, or free local delivery if you prefer that. We also are offering that as well. So, okay, well, we'll sign off. David, thanks so much again. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, Jen. I've loved being here.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and asked questions, and for your passion for literature and our community. We just so appreciate everyone who took their time out and spent the afternoon talking about books and kids and reading. So the best. Thanks so much. Okay, we'll see you guys later. David, thanks so much again.
My pleasure.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.